Good morning, everybody, and welcome along to this edition of LiR Confidential on lirmedia.tv. Our usual email, info@lirmedia.tv, if you want to make any comments, suggestions, and press the red button on the right-hand side to subscribe to our podcast. Now, I'm delighted this morning to have John Dicey in studio. And John is a global CEO and managing director of Carr Easyway. Now, before we get to that, John, actually a friend of mine had heard of it all right, and said to me in the studio last night, he said he knows people who have been absolutely in glowing terms about it. I'm not saying that because you're here with me, but he said it does work. Now, there you go. Martin isn't a man of many words, you won't mind me saying so, but he had to say it last night. But John, where did you grow up yourself, John?
Yeah, I was born and bred just outside West London, in the suburbs of London, a place called Ashford, Middlesex. The closest place that anyone might have heard of might be Staines, where Ali G made it quite infamous.
I lived in Boston Manor Road in London.
Well, that's right. Well, you must have been a Brentford fan. I was brought up to down along to Griffin Park in Brentford, and
it seems like a lifetime ago.
Exactly. Yeah, I spent quite a misspent youth meeting up with friends up in Kilburn and Willesden, Queen's Park, and they got me to stuff like the Saw Doctors and the Pogues and goodness knows what else. So
you're saying all the right things. Willesden, I know. Acton, I know. Ealing, I know all that here myself for all the wrong reasons, as you said. But you grew up there anyway, and would you say you had a happy time, happy childhood growing up, carefree, happy?
Yeah, definitely. I was very, very, very lucky. Really, I didn't do exceptionally well at school. I kind of struggled all the way through. Really, I was later to discover that I had dyslexia and dyspraxia, which somewhat explained why I spent a lot of my academic years sort of staring out through the window, thinking of other things rather than paying attention to what was being attempted to be taught to me. But yeah, a great upbringing. I started smoking very young. I have to say 13, 14 years old, and the normal sort of thing behind the bike sheds or off fishing with mates by the River Thames and what have you. Pretty early on, I think in my sort of late teens, I was already quite a heavy smoker.
Yeah. I mean, I myself, when we were going to secondary school, we were able to buy a cigarette and a scratch, as I said, a match and a scratch, and that's how it started for many people, And it was a cool thing to do for people, as you know. I mean, people today now it's different, but I'm just saying at the time. And there was a sense of adventure about it, and not a care in the world about many things in life until it's too late in many cases. But anyway, so that's how you got into the ciggies. I mean, I was up 40 a day, I think, one time myself, yeah. The old carols, you remember the carols?
Yeah, and stubby cigarettes. I used to wonder why they were called called Super Kings, but they were kind of this funny little tiny cigarette used to get.
The Craven A and what else? Craven A and the Rotmans, of course, with the beautiful red and gold box,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm ashamed to say I could have competed in the Olympics for gold medal smoking, but I eventually ended up as an 80 a day smoker, which is extraordinary now I think about it.
Oh my God. I mean, I lost my brother at 44 through cancer because of cigarettes. He was absolutely massive chain smoker, but look, that's the way life is. Yeah. I don't mean, but you, John, obviously smoking and drinking and all of that, as I experienced myself. Many people did that, grew up in the 60s and 70s, and that's not making excuses for people. That's just where you couldn't go to a cinema without seeing the languid lady on the couch with her beautiful manicured and her big long cigarette holder. It looks so fantastic, You couldn't but be influenced by that, We're all human. But you yourself then, did you decide to give up smoking, or were you worried when you were thinking about these things what brought you to that realization, really, you know?
I think probably in my sort of early to mid 20s, or when you're smoking as much as I was, you can't hide from the truth. You sort of almost constantly coughing and wheezing, you know, illnesses last for longer and are more severe, all sort of these sort of things. And
Yes.
caused my, so I tried to stop smoking so many times. I thought I loved smoking. That's a problem. I'd always feel miserable. The longest I'd last was a few hours. If I was asleep, maybe. But really, I'd be so determined to quit. I've tried hypnotherapy, shock treatment, been shown photos of smokers' lungs, Chinese remedies, acupuncture, you name it, I tried it, everything you can imagine. And
so you had a determination, really. So you were determined to.
Well, yeah, but it only used to last about an hour or two. You know, literally, I'd be determined not to smoke, and I'd wake up and think, okay, I'm okay now. I'd have a shower, get dressed, get off to work, and driving past the sort of petrol station, determined not to pull in there and get some cigarettes, but pull in there, park up, and pack some cigarettes. So I was terrible at stopping smoking. I just didn't have a clue how to do it. I felt miserable if I couldn't smoke. And that's really where Alan Carr's Easyway came into it. I'd heard about this book. It's still instantly the best-selling stop smoking book of all time worldwide. But I thought there's got to be something to this. So I had a read of it, and I didn't stop smoking having read it. But I was kind of saying to my friends, you know, this is such a brilliant book. It explains everything about smoking and stopping smoking. And I still had a cigarette in my fingers. You know, just something didn't click for me. And then I found out about the live seminars. You go along and listen to the Alan Carr guy talking about stopping smoking. And I think because of my experiences in the past, having tried to stop so many times without failure, I was almost convinced it wouldn't work, and I got a real surprise when it did. And that's really, I mean, you know, if you go from 80 cigarettes a day to none, it is like a miracle. And you sort of thought about it for a while afterwards, and eventually, at some point, I thought, I've got to get in touch with this guy. I've got to see whether he can really, can I help? It's just such an extraordinary thing to have done. And I got in touch and was determined to help, and that's how I got involved with the method. It was really kind of was a poacher turned gamekeeper kind of story. I went from being the biggest advert for smoking, constant smoking all the time, just wanting to help people get free. It was a brilliant thing to do.
Yeah. And when you say the book, I was looking online at the book, and you said that it helped you. How did that transformation for you occur? I know obviously we had said that you had a determination to give up, which I suppose is the first step really, John, you know, in any addiction, is recognizing it and all of that. We know all that from all the different programs you come across. But it's you yourself will have to do all the hard work when all is said and done, you know. You can have as many people around you as you like, but you yourself will have to do the donkey work in this.
Well, that's one way of doing it, and that's why I was just awful at doing that. I had lots of willpower in other areas of my life, but when it came to trying to stop smoking, I was useless at it. I actually went along to the Alan Carr seminar, convinced it wasn't going to work. They had the money back guarantee, and I said to my wife at the time, I think it was my girlfriend at the time, she's my wife now, and she used to hassle me about smoking. I said, look, I'm going to go along to this seminar. If it doesn't work, I want to get my money back anyway. But the deal is, you're not to nag me or moan about my smoking for 12 months after I've gone here. And that's the deal I thought I was doing. So I went along quite cocksure that I thought, well, the worst thing that can happen is I don't get nagged about smoking anymore. And I say no one was more surprised than me, or maybe my wife, that actually did the trick. And that's quite important for a lot of people. People do find it hard to kick addictions. They turn their will towards it, and they try and hang on for grim life to resist the temptation. What Alan Carr's Easyway method does is has you look at the addiction in a different way. So you say, why do you, in spite of all the obvious disadvantages, the worries about it, the health fears and money, everything else, despite all of those things, why do you carry on smoking? What's so great about being a smoker or a drinker or whatever else you might be addicted to? We sort of method analyzes each argument for smoking and gradually dismisses each one. And it only takes 5 or 6 hours, 5 hours or so to do that. But if you think of any argument a smoker can come up with for smoking, there's a clear not a counter argument as such, but you can actually explain how you got fooled into thinking. Now, how can a cigarette both relax you and help you handle stress and help you with pressure? I mean, these are all opposite sort of things. But the fact is, because we're incapable of doing anything without a cigarette, we're convinced it helps us.
Yes.
Rather than, the reason I can't do anything without a cigarette is I'm addicted, and as an addict, I can't function properly without a cigarette, without the drug. And once you realise it's the drug that's put you in that position of weakness, you actually feel quite empowered. And you think, okay, so if I stop taking this drug, I'm no longer sort of controlled by it. I should be fine. And in a nutshell, that's what it's about. We look at all the arguments for taking the drug and explain how you got fooled into thinking it provided you some sort of benefit.
Of course, John, my special guest here is John Dicey, Global CEO and Managing Director of Alan Carr's Easyway. Of course, John, when you finished, when you stopped smoking, I mean, your close friends, particularly your wife at the time, I mean, it must have been a shock in that respect, because you were so hooked on something and now you're not doing it anymore. How did you function socially, like, all the habits you have and all of that, that goes along with cigarette smoking?
Well, it was actually pretty easy. I mean, everyone was pretty quiet. Eventually, people forget that you used to be permanently smoking or whatever. I remember I shared an office with a guy when I was in my, probably was 24, 25, and we were great friends working together. It was the days when you could smoke constantly. He was a non-smoker, and I used to constantly smoke throughout the day. And he used to cause him terrible issues. I met him a couple of years after I stopped smoking, and he asked me what I was doing now. So I'm working at Carr Easyway. I quit smoking method. And he said, "Oh, I never realised you smoked." But he spent at least a year sat in an office with me smoking like a trooper. People just forget it's one of those things you become.
Yeah, and that was the time, of course, when you could smoke anywhere, as you said. And I mean, the idea of smoking where you're working now is anathema, which is a good thing anyway. My own dad gave up smoking in the 1960s, and he's still alive at 91. I think that has definitely a bearing on his longevity. And bought a bike and cycled to work to stay fit. But then, because, as you know, one of the effects of giving up any addiction, particularly smoking, is sometimes you get back your appetite, which people never think of those things. Because when you're a smoker like I was myself, every bit of food tastes the same. You're only eating it because you know you're hungry, you have to eat it. But when you give it up and it eventually works its way out of your system, you do have a heightened awareness of food for some reason, of the taste and that you didn't have before. Did that happen to you at all?
The taste buds return very quickly, and that's quite an interesting thing. But also, other interesting thing happens, which kind of counteract that for most people, especially if you're a heavy smoker. I used to drink gallons of coffee a day. I had no idea the reason I was drinking so much coffee was to kind of lubricate my smoking. You're constantly smoking, drinking, trying to keep going. And so when I stopped smoking, I just, without even thinking about it, I stopped. Coffee consumption went down from, 20 cups a day to 1 a day. And if each one of those cups has got a couple of sugars in it, that's just an amazing price you pay. So that was, most people find that they actually kind of, once they quit, they actually get through that initial, this is interesting, what's going on here? Things even out, and they end up fine because you have more energy you tend to do more stuff, you tend to have more fun.
Absolutely.
You tend to look after yourself a bit more anyway, just because it feels, life feels so great.
And in the Alan Carr's Easyway methodology, do they, in a positive way, obviously, because positive, bring a realization to the patient, because we are patients, people who are addicted, we are addicted to something, well, no matter what it is. Do they bring a realization that putting all this stuff into your system, whether smoking and all those gallons and gallons of coffee and all of that goes with it, I mean, that is hugely, that causes problems in itself, as well, health-wise. So is there that kind of, well, let's say, awareness given to the person themselves in as well when they go on your course? Now, these courses you run, John, are they over a period of time? Are they one-off, or can they be over a period of time?
They're normally one-offs. Most people need just one live seminar. It's about 5-6 hours long. For the few that require them, there's shorter backup seminars which are available, telephone, email support. But most people, just one seminar does the trick. We don't use any shock treatment or any scare stories or anything like that. Smokers know all about the downsides themselves already. So rather than focus on all those, and as a smoker, if anybody started talking about it, I'd just, on the TV, turn the channel over. If you read an magazine and there's an article on the dangers of smoking, just flick through it quickly. You wouldn't even look at it. So we really just look at the arguments for smoking, arguments against smoking. You ignore those. You know all about those. Let's look at these arguments for smoking and dismantle each one in a really positive way.
Yeah.
And by the end of the seminar, people are generally quite happy. Just a ritual final cigarette. We say carry on smoking throughout. You have smoking breaks, and people go outside and smoke. And at the end, we have one final ritual, a final cigarette, and then everyone has that, and then just throws their cigarettes and lighters away. And that's the sense of freedom that's experienced. And we're very fortunate that it's been so popular in Ireland as well for the last sort of 20 years or so. I think.
Yeah.
Sort of so many people attending, mainly in Dublin and perhaps in Cork from time to time. And now the seminars are now available via Zoom as well.
Of course, that was one of the upsides of the pandemic, that we were not forced, but we were forced really to communicate in a different way. Hence, we were on Zoom ourselves, but of course, there's still nothing like the live eye to eye, and person to person. They'll never be replaced.
Well, we were very, very fortunate, really. We'd been operating in the USA for 20 years. And a lot of people think Alan Carr and Alan Carr's Easyway is an American company. It's not, with the UK. But mainly from the cities of sort of New York and LA. And this is going back sort of 5 years ago, 6 years ago. What I wanted to do is just expand as quickly as we possibly could in the USA, get the method out as far and wide as we could. So we'd already got on board with pioneers of online seminars, live seminars, delivering the method live online. And overnight, that allowed us to make the method available in every city, in every state, coast to coast, across the whole of the USA. So it was 5 years ago or so. So when the COVID crisis came along, it was a very natural thing for us to do in other markets. We were very experienced with it. We had absolute faith in the method, that it could be transferred and delivered live online. And so it was a small skip for us. I think a lot of other organizations and companies had this kind of sudden shock that they had to deal in this way. They'd never done it before in that way, but we were very lucky, very fortunate that we had experience in it.
And of course, it's not smoking. I mean, you can help people with drink, alcohol addiction, losing weight. I mean, losing weight has been a bugbear of mine since the early 1960s when all these you get all these programs anyway, and some of them have a limited use. I'm not knocking them all, really. There's some genuine ones out there. Emotional eating. I was reading that emotional eating. I shouldn't be laughing at it, really, but it's a modern terminology, emotional eating, for making excuse for people for getting fat, is it?
Yeah, well, actually, so this we used to look at things like sort of weight control or whatever as being just one subject, but actually within it, there's a whole lot of stuff. One which is we have a program called Good Sugar, Bad Sugar, which just looks at refined sugar, processed carbohydrates, starchy carbohydrates, that kind of thing. Which actually there are an awful lot of people. They can do whatever diet they want, but if they carry on eating those kind of foods, they never get control of their weight. The addictive quality of the way that sugar and bad carbs, we call them, manipulate blood sugar levels, it becomes a real struggle. So that's a kind of another section of it. There's exercise and fitness. There's in terms of emotional eating. That's one of the things where we kind of, from birth, we're kind of taught to almost manage and handle emotions with food or drink or whatever it might be, and it becomes a very problematic in times when life is more stressful than ever. We'll turn to the things they think are effective, and whether that's certain foods, or whether that's alcohol, whether that's cannabis or heroin or cocaine. The great thing about the method, we're very privileged to have worked closely with Alan Carr himself, and with him entrusting the method to myself and other senior therapists in the team, so that we could actually apply it across the board to so many issues. Some of them seem relatively trivial. So caffeine addiction, you think, well, how bad can that be? But actually, if you see someone who's pretty much hooked on caffeine, they're tired all the time, they're down, they're depressed, it affects every aspect of their life. And others, huge, like smoking and cannabis and cocaine as well. People get in the grip of these addictions, and it's great that they have another way of getting free.
Of course, then, obviously the smoking lobby is under severe pressure the last 20 or 30 years anyway, I'm surprised at this stage that many countries haven't banned tobacco products, made them totally and utterly illegal. It's a way over time, because they've introduced a new method now to make sure smokers stay smoking, and it's called vaping. And I think myself, it's an insidious form of pretense that, okay, John, you're on 60 cigarettes a day. Go off of that now, John. I'm going to this new shiny shop with lovely shiny colors to attract, to the senses. And after you go vaping, because I know one person who is a vapor, and she's absolutely worse than ever because she had a huge addiction. And vaping will not, as you know, and I'll tell you, will not replace or help you in any way. In fact, I think it's an insidious form of keeping you hooked. That's my take on it anyway, John.
Yeah, I mean, we support anything that helps smokers to quit, and there are sort of harm reduction arguments for vaping. So, I wouldn't get into them too deeply, but I can at least accept that there are some arguments there. But they all sort of get blown out of the water when you understand, actually, wouldn't it just be easier to quit smoking? Wouldn't it just be easier to stop using nicotine? And in this sort of age of, poverty, less money around than ever before, we're going through a tough old time with more to come. Absolutely. You can actually lift people out of poverty by helping them to quit smoking, not via taking something else up, but will also cost them lots of money and will also eventually be taxed to the hilt for in a few years. It can achieve fabulous results, and I think Ireland's been very interesting, very progressive in their approach to helping people quit smoking. The Tobacco Free Research Institute of Ireland, headed up by Professor Luke Clancy, a great Irishman. Sheila Keegan, who is I think she's retired now, but they really looked into what we did as a result of I think there's a former health minister, James Riley, was interested in determined to get rid of smoking in Ireland by 2030, I think it was, something like that. And he just looked at the stats and said, well, there's just no way this is going to happen if we carry on doing what we're doing. No. So they arranged what's called a randomized control trial that looked at the Carr Easyway live seminars versus the Quit.ie program. And that was a real labour of love for us. The team in Carr Island, Brenda Sweeney, and Jim McCready, Paul Melvin, and the team of therapists worked incredibly hard with that. And of course, the results came out, were published, and we were proven to be at least, I think it was twice as effective as the existing Quit.ie program, which is just a brilliant thing to do. So, and I know that there has been lots of pessimism for vaping in Ireland. I think quite rightly so. You walk in, I'm sure that a couple of years pre-pandemic since I was in Ireland, that you kind of walk into Dublin Airport, you see these adverts for vaping devices that look just like the cigarette adverts from the 1970s. When I was at football matches as a kid, and it's the same drug, it's the same issues, and as soon as people get hooked, they tend to go on to the harder stuff as it's perceived. So people vaping when they can't smoke, but smoking when they can, that kind of effect.
Yeah. And I think that, as I said to you, I don't want to repeat myself, as I said to you, there's no difference in my view between vaping and smoking. It's all the same. It's the same downward spiral for the human being, And I mean, there are early indications of the same problems health-wise with people vaping or smoking, Not exactly the same, but there's related health problems associated with it. And also, John, you help people with gambling addiction as well, because it's a bugbear of mine, obviously, is, and anybody I've spoken to, is obviously the gambling is just, I can't even imagine a person can sit online in their own sitting or bedroom at night and lose the house around them in a matter of seconds. And why online gambling is not completely and utterly outlawed or whatever about the bookie shop, you'll have to make an effort to go down there, get up out of bed and walk down the street and go into the bookie shop. But okay, it's bad enough, but online it's appalling altogether, So many young people, I meet them every day. I use public transport most of the time. I meet them every day, and they have their different companies. I want to give them, who they are on their phone. They put a £5 here, and I was saying to myself, I didn't realize the problem is so bad, very bad.
It is horrific. You can see, as you were saying, you lose this. When I was a youngster, if you wanted to bet, you have to go to bookmakers, and they were dark, mysterious places. You would walk with curtains shut, you couldn't see in them or whatever. And now it's kind of everywhere. Kids have got these apps on their phones. As soon as they're able to, they're lured in with free bets, which is just outrageous, really, opening up multiple accounts. If you go to any sporting event, particularly soccer, I think, or rugby, whether it's in the UK or Ireland, and you see, particularly behind the goals where the youngsters might be, and they've all got their phones out, and it's not on social media. They're checking their bets. That's that link between gambling and sport has been kind of absolutely cemented in there, and causes all sorts of problems. So
it is, and so many. I mean, it's a misnomer really, because you're pursuing a healthy activity in professional or amateur soccer, no matter what grade it is. It's a healthy pursuit. You keep fit, and it's good for your body. And then these clubs, I'm not blaming the players themselves professionally or personally, that's a different kettle of fish, but the clubs themselves allow gambling company to be a main sponsor, one of the sponsors of the club. It should not be allowed. The same with drinks companies, Now that's falling away a lot, which I'm glad to say, because we have a new moral dilemma in the ownership of soccer clubs. That's a different argument for a different program, John. But having schoolboys, even schoolboys soccer here in this country, sponsored by drinks companies or gambling companies, is just anathema to everything that the sport should stand for, But the Carr Easyway would be, would be able to tackle. And is it a big problem, John? I don't have to ask you that gambling is worse than cigarette smoking in one way.
Well, in terms of how quickly you can lose everything, it's horrific. And program for gambling has been ever so successful. It's available in the book format, but also as an online video program as well. And we've been running that for a good over 10 years, I think now, and very, very, great reviews. I think we don't advertise much at all. Most people hear about what we do via friends who recommended that they used it to quit smoking or quit alcohol or get free from sugar or quit gambling, and they recommend friends and colleagues to it the same. Issues like gambling have a little bit more shame attached to people. Feel less they feel embarrassed they used to gamble, so they don't tend to maybe tell too many people about it. But if if it comes up in conversation, somebody expresses that they have a problem with gambling, that's when they step forward and say, well, you might want to try this. It can help. Yeah.
And the thing about gambling is, if you're smoking, you can be seen smoking going down the street, as you said. You could be smoking in your car or your van or whatever you're driving. But gambling is one of those hidden problems. I think it helps, though. Let's be positive in one way. It helps when you have people who are what we call influencers in society, that people look up to. Like, particularly, I'm thinking of film stars, male or female, and it's heartening to see that they're not smoking anymore. They're not there hanging around in their interview with cigarette smoke swirling around. I think that has a positive image and a positive picture for people. If they had more people like that, and as you said, gambling needs people to step up to the plate. Some of them wouldn't have the courage. Most of them would have it. Would have been encouragement to say, look, I was that man, I was that woman, I was that person. And if we had more of that, I think people don't really understand or appreciate the horrific consequences of serious gambling. I don't think they do.
No, it's true. Gambling was an interesting issue to work on and find a solution to, because it exploits something very natural that resonates with our childhoods.
Yes.
We were kids, whether the girls or boys, quite competitive. You say, well, I'm going to race you to the lamppost, or I'm going to race you to the gate. Everything's a race, which is really healthy. That's part of the way we're made up. What causes a problem is when that's mixed in with first one to get to the gate gets a quid. That's the introduction to gambling, where it suddenly becomes something more complex than just wanting to get there first and get the praise. And it's those sort of very basic instincts that gambling exploits, and that gambling companies exploit in their advertising. They use that sort of sense of competition, interest, and you probably noticed this as well. All these sort of the gambling industry very much focus their advertising on saying, "Don't get addicted." Sort of when the fun stops, stop. Now, that's a very well-known advertising slogan they use, and they put fun in big, glittery, gold and silver, diamond lump letters. Fun.
Classy.
Down here, and they're almost using the warnings about gambling to inspire the urge to gamble in the viewer. It's just every bit as bad as the old tobacco companies used to be in the 60s.
You do, yeah, and you see that gamble, and the course Cheltenham is over, which is it's a huge gambling splurge, and then you have the Grand National coming up, but we're between them now. But the advertising, as you said, gamble aware, after putting up all these fantastic odds, all these free bets, and then down at the end, gamble aware. The same with the alcohol ads, drink aware, when in our case, .ie, drink aware. And I went in to see, it's going to be knocking people who do things for the right reason, but has the opposite effect, in my view, how can you ask people to be aware of alcohol when you're an alcoholic, are moving towards it. You know, that really, I don't know myself. I'm not saying we should ban everything, but I think it's coming to time that we should ban online gambling, casinos and all of that, and all of the apps and that goes with it. Online gambling should be utterly outlawed, as well as tobacco products should be outlawed. I think, John, we have to stand up and say, are we coming to that point in time where these things have to be outlawed and made illegal?
Well, I think the most important thing is that people are given effective means of quitting, of getting free. So first of all, that's every effort should be put into that.
True.
Now, to protect future generations, I mean, there's talk at the moment with about anyone born after 2010 might be banned from buying cigarettes. So they're 12 years old at the moment, so they're not really in the market for cigarettes. But the idea being that actually by the time they get to the age that they might think about starting smoking in the late teens, obviously it's still not able to buy them until they're 16, 17 or 18, whatever it is. It will make it very difficult for them to be a 20-year-old smoker. Now, that kind of makes sense. I can see the appeal of it, but actually prohibition doesn't really work. I mean, it just makes it more of a challenge to get hold of cigarettes, and people can beat the ban. And how do you beat it? In most communities, unfortunately, in the Western world, people can get their hands on any drug they want, whether it's cocaine or cannabis.
Oh, absolutely. Well, yeah, that's
nothing's going to stop smokers doing that in the same way. So I think there are elegant ways of doing it. One, provide effective, proven means to help people stop. And then maybe just look at education. If people, Alan Carr himself used to say, if you could explain to a mouse that bit of cheese on that trap is a lure, and if he caves in and tries to get to the lure, certain death awaits. Certain death is a fatal decision. If you could explain that to a mouse, they'd never go in a trap. And I think that should be our attitude and approach to youngsters, really. It's in terms of, okay, just explain how addiction works. People think addiction works because the drugs, whatever it might be, alcohol or caffeine or nicotine, they're pleasurable. Actually, pleasure has very little to do with it, initially. Most people remember their first cigarette as being at best sort of all right, or worse, pretty unpleasant. It's just, we actually work hard to learn to smoke and put up with the smell and the taste and else to it. But that has us convinced we could never get hooked. I don't even like the thing. It's horrible. I can never get hooked. At that stage, most of us have that thought. We already are hooked. And I found out that very person was 18 or something, and I thought, oh, I'll knock it on the head. I'm not hooked. Lasted a few hours and off I went. I thought, oh, it's just the wrong time. I'll stop next year or in a couple of years or whatever. And so I think explaining how addiction works to youngsters is really important. I do feel great sympathy for people who have battled addiction. So with Alan Carr Easyway, most people are pretty cool. They're free. They don't feel any sense of loss or whatever. But if you're using willpower, if you're grit and determination and challenge daily not to have a drink, it's very, very hard to go into an Esso garage or whatever, a petrol station, and be confronted by a wall of booze. It just seems really odd. And of course, the wall of booze is still there. The wall of cigarette packs is gone, but they've been replaced by almost identical vaping packets.
Yeah.
It's a funny world where we kind of allow that sort of exploitation amongst a population, many of whom have an issue with for example, alcohol.
We've confronted that ourselves, John, two old fogies like ourselves, although I'm longer in the tooth than you. The invincibility of youth can overlook the consequences of the actions as we know ourselves. But does Alan Carr Easyway, does it go into schools speaking to people or speaking to classes or anything like that?
We do so in some countries. In others, it's actually almost impossible to get in to talk to youngsters anyway. We actually did a special. I think I don't really know. It's one of those things, isn't it? The Irish government spent a lot of money looking at Alan Carr's Easyway live seminars to stop smoking to prove that the method was effective, even more effective than what they were doing at the moment. But hasn't spent a penny providing them to the smokers of Ireland that they want to help. Since it seems that there are these odd contradictions between what they want to do and what they're actually prepared to do.
Yeah.
We found the most effective way for us is through publishing. We worked on a project going back more than 15 years, actually, shortly after my kids were born. And it's called Smoking Sucks. And it was exactly the principle I've just described. We created this colourful comic in a manga style that guided, it was intended for 12-year-olds, 11, 12-year-olds, to be able to see the process of addiction for what it was and how it works. And we met great resistance with that. We thought, parents would buy it in their droves, but they kind of hid away from it. Who knows? But we're still trying. We're still trying to get that message through.
Gee, of course, that's disappointing, isn't it? Myself to hear that. That's disappointing because obviously you would think that that's where you begin. That's where we all began, 13, 14, smoking. You would really think that's the target population now, because you can believe you and me, the tobacco companies are well wise to these things. They're well aware, because when they see their profits dwindling, they come up with new gimmicks every day. But I'm absolutely shocked that there isn't a system, not because I'm here with you, John, but systems like yours that have proven track record, proved they work and all of that. They're not, I won't say mandatory, but they're not infused into the system of help that pupils can get in schools. I'm surprised and shocked in the same symptoms, It's stunning, really. Stunning.
Well, it's the interesting thing, as I said, this randomised control trial, which was undertaken in and around Dublin, going back a few years now, which proved the effectiveness of Alan Carr seminars, played a huge part in our history, along with another randomised controlled trial that took place in London. So the last year or two, we've been helping the World Health Organization help smokers all over the world, places like the Philippines, East Timor, Ukraine, Russia, Turkey, South America, Suriname, with the World Health Organization as one of their partners. And the other organizations who they're partnered with who are people like Facebook and Amazon. There's little old us who are sitting at the same table helping smokers all over the world. Yet in Ireland, which played such a key part in proving the effectiveness of the method, smokers can't get Alan Carr on the health service. It's not available to them. It just seems very odd to me that particularly as I think it was Irish lottery funds were spent to do this, to conduct the study. So we're still knocking at the door, and hopefully we'll get let in at one point.
Well, that's true, and I didn't realise that our health system hasn't included Alan Carr's Easyway as part and parcel of the normal program of helping people with addiction to smoking, particularly those youth strike. I'm not knocking any other program. I'm just saying that there are programs. Obviously there are programs out there as well, but from the little bit I've read about Alan Carr's Easyway and the little bit I've done since you agreed to come on the show, it's phenomenal. And I'm not, as I said, I wouldn't be saying that because you're here. I would say it's genuinely phenomenal results, and surely any education service or health service worth their salt would at least, lads, let's give this a try for 12 months. Let's give it a 2-year cycle or whatever they come up with. I don't know. And how successful are you in Britain, Alan or John, with Easyway? Is it assumed into national NHS as one of the pointers to get help?
Yes, ironically, as opposed to Ireland, there are local health authorities in the UK who adopted us. They've looked at it, they've tested it, we've run pilots with them, they've seen how effective it is. And I think our pitch to them and to the Irish Health Service is very. We're not saying you must do this. What we're saying is just give smokers a choice. Smokers have tried nicotine patches and gum. They've tried acupuncture. They've tried vaping. Why not give them a drug-free choice? Well, there's nothing bad's going to happen. And so it's accepted. The more exit doors from addiction you can offer people, the more chance there is they're going to get free. So we just want to be part of that conversation. So yeah, I think local authorities in the UK are adopting us. National Institute for Clinical Health and Excellence still meeting with us about us, and they're already giving it a thumbs up. They're just looking into cost effectiveness studies and everything, and that's watch this space because that's going to be some exciting news soon. And the World Health Organization, so you can't really do much better than that. But our corporate clients, crazy thing. We get global corporate clients like Google or Mercedes-Benz, or just all over the world. We're helping these people quit smoking. But it's poor smokers that maybe don't have access to these programs that suffer.
I worked in the civil service, so sometimes it can move slowly, and that's not making an excuse. It's just, you know yourself with the civil service in Britain, like that. If the man at the top of the thing is convinced, then action will be taken. But before we finish up, John, a message to our, I'm saying this personally, a message to our HSC, the Health Service Executive, really and truly echoing a fantastic phrase you used. The more exits you have of getting out of place, getting out of addiction, the better for yourself. And Alan Carr's Easyway is providing another exit for people with addiction. That's a fantastic line, you know. Why not give them another choice, another option of exiting addiction in Alan Carr's Easyway? John, it's been a fantastic that you took the time out of your day, your busy day, to be here with us on LiR Confidential. Have you any final message to our brethren, my fellow brethren here on this island, you know?
Well, listen, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you, Pat. I've got to correct myself. Earlier, we were talking about cigarette brands, and you mentioned Carol's. The brand I was trying to remember were Majors. Do you remember Majors?
Majors, right.
All my Irish mates used to smoke them in London, and they've just seemed that the tiniest cigarettes you can imagine. Sort of time. But no, I mean, listen, really, it's just if you're gripped by an addiction, don't lose hope. You can get free. It doesn't have to mean that you're going to be miserable afterwards and feel like you're missing out on something for the rest of your life. You can actually, if I, as a former 80 a day smoker, can get free and feel great, anyone can, and just knowing how to do it is the important thing.
Well, John Dicey has said, Global CEO and Managing Director of Alan Carr's Easyway. It's been a pleasure, all of ours here on LiR Media and this program, LiR Confidential. So we'll catch up with you again very soon, no doubt, now that we found you.
Look forward to that. I can't wait to get back to Ireland. As I say, it's been a couple of years of not being able to go anywhere, really. So it's one of my first port of calls.
Fantastic, John. And for this edition of LiR Confidential on LiRmedia.tv, our special guest has been John Dicey from Alan Carr's Easyway. John, the best of luck in all your future endeavours, and take care and good health as well.
Best. Thanks, Stu. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye. If you want to make any comments, suggestions, and press the red button on the right hand side to subscribe to our podcast. Now, I'm delighted this morning to have